Any last words?
His name, George Junior Stinney Jr. He was 5'1" and weighed about 95 pounds. Today, we dive into the troubling narrative of George Stinney Jr., a story of blatant injustice and the violation of human and civil rights. In the shadowy corridors of history, George's story unfolds as a testament to the systemic flaws that can pervade the pursuit of justice, leaving in their wake shattered lives and an enduring call for redress. We navigate the troubling waters of a case that epitomizes the darker chapters of our collective history, where a young 95-pound soul found himself entangled in a web of prejudice and malice. George's story transcends the bounds of individual tragedy. It is a mirror reflecting the deep-seated injustices that linger in the annals of our legal system. This narrative is more than a historical account. It is a profound exploration into the soul of a society grappling with its demons, where a 14-year-old boy, instead of being shielded by the pillars of justice, became a victim of their collapse. It's a tale reverberating through time, challenging us to confront the uncomfortable truths about our past and urging us to forge a more equitable future. As the school day concluded in the afternoon of March 24th, 1944, two young white girls, inhabitants of a segregated mill town, embarked on a post-school adventure. Betty June Binnicker, age 11, and her 7-year-old friend Mary Emma Thames shared a bicycle and made plans for a springtime pursuit, hunting for maypops. Wandering along the railroad tracks, their path crossed past a bustling lumber mill, a hub where the majority of Alcolu's residents, including their fathers, worked. In the distance, they saw two black children. George Stinney Jr., a 7th grader, and his little sister Amy, tended to his family's cow, allowing it to graze. Little did they know this seemingly ordinary encounter would unravel into a story of intrigue, injustice, and a community forever changed. Betty June and Mary Emma stopped near George and Amy, asking if they knew where the maypops were. George and Amy told them they didn't know, and the girls continued their quest. A lumber truck passed by. June 16, 1944, a date etched in infamy where the life of George Stinney Jr., a mere 95-pound, 14-year-old black boy, was tragically extinguished in the unforgiving embrace of an electric chair in Columbia, South Carolina. A tale unfolds rooted in the soil of racial prejudice and systemic injustice. In the stifling heat of 1944, the tranquility shattered, leading to a crime that would change George's life forever. In one version of the story, the very narrative that would later cost George's life, it was told that he followed the girls and, acting alone, brutally attacked them with a railroad spike, resulting in the murder of both. The other, more hearsay version, still murmured within the confines of Alcolu today, suggests an alternative scenario. According to this account, the girls also made a stop at the residence of a prominent white family, inquiring if the wife of a lumber mill boss could accompany them. Regrettably, she declined. However, her son, arriving in his logging truck, saw the girls and offered to chauffeur them on their quest for maypops while he unloaded his truck. Without hesitation, the girls eagerly accepted the offer, jumping into the truck. The divergence between these two versions cast a veil of mystery over the events that unfolded that fateful day. Alcolu, a tranquil sawmill village near the Pocataglio Swamp in Clarendon County, had never witnessed such horrors. Anchored by a lumber mill, the community was known for its devout churchgoers and flourishing cotton fields. Black and white families typically resided on opposite sides of the railroad track, but at the mill, racial lines blurred as men of both races worked together under the D.W. Alderman and Sons Company. The missing girls, last seen foraging for maypops after school, triggered an unprecedented search. As dusk fell, a search party of 100 to 200 men scoured the town, desperate for any sign of Betty June and Mary Emma. The Stinney family received the news while attending a neighborhood gathering. George Stinney Jr., the 14-year-old son, informed his parents that he and his sister Amy had seen the girls earlier. Without hesitation, George and his father joined the search. The serene woods surrounding Alcolu concealed a grim discovery, revealed only when the preacher's son stumbled on a chilling scene. Two lifeless bodies sprawled in a shallow, waterlogged ditch, laid on their backs like discarded dolls. A broken bicycle, its front wheel detached from the frame. As darkness shrouded Alcolu, the mystery deepened. The following morning, under the rising sun, George Burke Sr., a prominent figure at the lumber mill, led a determined search party. Their grim discovery unfolded on the property he owned. Betty June and Mary Emma's lifeless body in a soggy ditch, victims of a tragedy that would cast a dark shadow over Alcolu for years to come. The preacher's boy, in a state of shock, discovered Betty June and Mary Emma in a state beyond repair. Their bodies, stiff and broken, told a tale of cruelty. Dr. Ashbury Cecil Bozar, tasked with examining the aftermath, uncovered the gruesome details. Mary Emma bore a jagged 2-inch cut above her right eyebrow, while a hole punctured her forehead into the skull. Betty June, subjected to at least 7 brutal blows to the head, suffered a skull so crushed that it defied recognition. That fateful afternoon unfolded in an unassuming 3-room company house, where George and his sister Amy, alongside half-brother Johnny, visiting from nearby Pinewood before reporting for military duty. Their parents were away, and their brother Charles accompanied their sister Catherine to the local beauty parlor. In the heart of Alcolu, reserved for black families near the railroad tracks, the Stinneys resided in a modest home. George's mother, a cook at Alcolu's school for black children, and his father, George Sr., a former sharecropper turned mill worker, worked hard to make ends meet. Despite their modest circumstances, the Stinneys found comfort in their routine. They grew vegetables in the garden, drank fresh cow's milk each morning, and relied on the company store on Main Street for essentials. On Sundays, like many in Alcolu, they walked to Green Hill Baptist Church, forging a sense of community with fellow black families. On that particular day, while 8-year-old Amy played in the yard with a brood of Rhode Island red hens, 2 black cars drove up their street, ushering in an air of apprehension. White men in suits appeared, entering the Stinney residence through the back door. Witnessing this ominous scene, Amy hid in the chicken coop as the men took George and Johnny away in handcuffs. The tranquility of their ordinary afternoon was shattered, setting in motion a series of events that would forever alter the course of the Stinney family's life. This would be the last time Amy saw George alive. As things intensified, George Sr. was fired from his job at the mill that night and fled to Pinewood in fear of a lynch mob. Johnny was released by sheriff's deputies. Within hours, George found himself in a courtroom, facing an unjust trial that would seal his fate. The rush to judgment left no room for justice. The heinous double murders traveled beyond the confines of Alcolu, capturing the attention of both Columbia and Charleston. The brutality of the crime, coupled with its vicious nature, propelled the news into the statewide spotlight. Adding a layer of intensity, Clarendon Deputy Sheriff H.S. Newman, keen to feed the media frenzy, asserted that a mere 40 minutes after George's arrest, he had secured a confession. According to Newman, George allegedly admitted to murdering the girls. The police claimed that he wanted to have sex with the 11-year-old. Allegedly, George used a foot-long railroad trestle spike to commit the murders. In the aftermath of this confession, Newman claimed that George cooperated, leading law enforcement officers to the concealed location in the woods where he had hidden the spike. The details of George's detention, however, were not disclosed as rumors of lynching swirled within Alcolu, leaving even George's parents in the dark about his whereabouts. Throughout the ensuing days and weeks leading up to the trial, neither of George's parents had the opportunity to see or speak to their son. Mrs. Stinney, grappling with the weight of uncertainty, turned to prayer, and difficulty was compounded by the lack of financial means and resources in pursuit of justice for their son. Now, this alleged confession raises a few questions. Firstly, there is no written or signed statement substantiating that George confessed. Secondly, there was no investigation of the circumstances. The trial was rushed and due process wasn't given. The lawyer appointed to George was a tax attorney with no criminal case experience and failed to call a single witness. George Burke Sr., initially a witness due to his role in the search party that discovered the girls' bodies, assumed a more active role. 4 days later, he found himself serving as the foreman of the coroner's inquest jury. Despite the apparent conflict of interest, the group recommended forwarding charges against George to a specially convened grand jury. Remarkably, Burke continued to wear multiple hats as he not only participated in the grand jury, but also played a pivotal role in expediting George's trial. Third Circuit Solicitor Frank McLeod, alongside a local state senator, successfully appealed for a special term of criminal court, paving the way for a swift trial. Within 31 days of his arrest, George stood before the Clarendon County Courthouse in downtown Manning. Dressed in jeans and a faded blue shirt, a reporter from the state newspaper in Columbia noted that George looked calm and apparently little concerned. 14-year-old George hadn't seen or spoken to his parents for weeks. His parents refused to show up out of fear of the white mob. Instead, George found himself surrounded by strangers as 1,500 people overflowed into the courtroom, spilling out of every door. George Book Sr. took to the stand as a witness during the trial, which began at 2:30 p.m. and concluded in under 3 hours. The jury, comprised solely of white men, deliberated a mere 10 minutes before rendering a verdict. Guilty with no recommendation for mercy. Without delay, Judge P.H. Stoll of King Street issued a chilling sentence, death by electrocution. The swift and decisive nature of the trial left little room for justice to prevail. In addition, no blacks were allowed in the courtroom. In Charleston, a united front emerged as organizers from black and white ministerial unions fervently petitioned Governor Allen Johnston. Their plea was one: grant clemency to George based on his age and commute his sentence to life imprisonment. The governor's office witnessed an overwhelming flood of empathy, with hundreds of letters and telegrams pouring in across the state and the nation. This collective voice echoed a desperate plea for mercy on George's behalf, an appeal rooted in a shared belief in justice and humanity. People driven by a sense of justice and Christian values earnestly appealed to Governor Johnston's moral compass. They drew attention to striking parallels with another high-profile case from the same year centered around a white Paris Island teenager named Ernest Feltwell Jr. Feltwell, the 16-year-old son of a Marine Corps warrant officer, attempted to rape an 8-year-old girl in the woods on December 3, 1943. When she started to scream, he admitted to covering her mouth with his hand and suffocated her. Following Feltwell's arrest in 1944 in February, his defense spared no expense. 3 attorneys were appointed to represent him, underscoring the comprehensive effort to ensure a robust defense. The legal team went the extra mile by consulting with a nationally renowned criminologist, utilizing a lie detector test, and even committing Feltwell to a state hospital in Columbia to assess his sanity. Despite the severity of the crime, Feltwell ultimately received a sentence of 20 years in prison. This stark divergence in legal treatment further underscored the stark contrast in the justice system, raising questions about the fairness of George Stinney Jr.'s impending fate. As noted by the Journal of American History, one letter read, "Beseech you, spare young George Stinney. Child execution is only for Hitler," one woman wrote. She was one of the dozen letter writers who compared his execution to Nazi actions. Others warned Johnston that executing George would only embolden black activists at the time of already heightened racial tensions. His execution would give the Negroes of South Carolina a martyr and another battle cry with which to arouse their followers, cautioned W.R. Pettigrew, minister of Citadel Square Baptist Church in Charleston. Governor Johnston, entrenched in a fierce and contentious Democratic primary race for the U.S. Senate against the ardent segregationist Senator Ellison Smith, remained unyielding. The political landscape and the acrimony of the race made it untenable for him to display any perceived weakness on matters of race. This political reality, coupled with his firm belief in the severity of George Stinney Jr.'s alleged crime, solidified Johnston's refusal to budge on the issue of clemency. The bitter political battle shaped the trajectory of the case, leaving George with little recourse against the impending execution. Governor Johnston chose a chilling course of action. Instead of addressing the appeals with empathy or considering the broader context, he opted to reply with a letter that dove into the details of one version of the crime, painting a gruesome and disturbing picture. This calculated move seemed designed to justify his stance and strengthen his resolve against granting clemency for George Stinney Jr. The letter, steeped in grisly detail, left those advocating for mercy grappling with the severity of the depicted narrative. He said, "I have just talked with the officer who made the arrest in this case. It may be interesting for you to know that Stinney killed the smaller girl to rape the larger one. Then he killed the larger girl and raped her dead body. 20 minutes later, he returned and attempted to rape her again, but her body was too cold. All of this, he admitted himself. The governor's decision was final. With no appeal in sight, the execution will move forward." 17-year-old Wilford Johnny Hunter got arrested for joyriding in a stolen car with a couple of friends in Sumter, about 35 miles away. The ensuing police chase left Hunter with a bullet in his abdomen and a stint at Sumter's Tuamé Hospital in grave condition. When he recovered, he wound up in the big jail in Sumter with George, who arrived looking frail and underfed. "Hey kid," Hunter asked, "what they got you for?" "They're going to electrocute me." Shocked, Hunter steadied himself on the bench. Over 3 days, George found a friend and confidant in the wounded man. To Hunter, George was the kid who liked to sing country songs from the Grand Ole Opry. George told him, "Johnny, when they electrocute me, I'm coming back and I'm going to haunt you." Hunter told George not to talk like that. George asked Hunter to write a letter to a preacher in Florida named S.P. Rewell, whom George said had helped his brother back when he was in trouble. Hunter did so on a penny postcard telling him it was a matter of life or death. "Johnny, why do they want to kill me for something I didn't do? Why?" Hunter couldn't answer him. Keys rattled then. A gate creaked open. Heavy footsteps plodded up the stairs. George grew quiet. It was their last day together. George grabbed Hunter and Hunter flung his arms around George. George whispered, "Bye." On June 16, 1944, a somber scene unfolded as George Stinney Jr. entered the execution chamber at the South Carolina State Penitentiary in Columbia, a Bible clutched under his arm. Weighing 95 pounds, he was dressed in a loose-fitting striped jumpsuit and strapped into an electric chair designated for adults. His small stature posed challenges. The state electrician struggled to adjust an electrode to his right leg, and a mask, too large for his small face, was placed over it. The solemn question was posed to George. "Any last words?" Stinney, in a quiet yet resolute voice, replied, "No, sir." The prison doctor prodded further. "You don't want to say anything about what you did?" Again, Stinney responded with a simple, "No, sir." The switch was flicked. A surge of 2400 volts coursed through Stinney's small frame, causing the ill-fitting mask to slip off. His eyes, wide and teary, conveyed the profound gravity of the moment, while saliva spilled from his mouth. A sad detail seen by all those who witnessed it. After 2 additional charges totaling 1900 volts, George Stinney Jr. sat lifeless. He was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. Let this sink in. In a span of 83 days, George Stinney Jr., a 14-year-old, was charged with murder, tried, convicted, and executed by the state of South Carolina in the United States. On December 16, 2014, a landmark moment unfolded as a South Carolina judge, Carmen T. Mullen, the 14th Judicial District Judge, made a historic decision to vacate the conviction of George Stinney Jr., the youngest person executed in the U.S. in the 20th century. In a resounding declaration, Judge Mullen stated, "I can think of no greater injustice than the violation of one's constitutional rights, which has been proven to me in this case." The backdrop of this case was Stinney, a 14-year-old black boy who had been convicted by an all-white jury for the alleged murder of 2 young white girls. The police claimed Stinney had confessed to the crime, but no such confession was ever produced. And if George Stinney Jr. did confess, it was believed that he was coerced. There is no proof of this, but it is important to mention. Nonetheless, the execution of a 14-year-old child constituted cruel and unusual punishment. Adding a layer of injustice, Stinney's sister, who could have provided an alibi, attested in a 2009 affidavit that she was with him on the day of the murders, rendering it impossible for him to have committed the crimes. However, she was never called to testify at his trial, raising significant questions about the fairness of the legal proceedings that led to George Stinney Jr.'s unlawful execution. One of the pivotal legal grounds for overturning George Stinney Jr.'s conviction centered on the glaring lack of adequate representation. In her decision, Judge Mullen emphasized the deficiencies in Stinney's legal defense, stating Stinney's appointed counsel made no independent investigation, did not request a change of venue or additional time to prepare the case. He asked little to no questions on cross-examination of the state's witnesses and presented few or no witnesses on behalf of his client, based on the length of the trial. He failed to file an appeal or a stay of execution. That is the essence of being ineffective. This scathing assessment underscored the fundamental failures in Stinney's legal representation, contributing significantly to the injustice that transpired.
I lift up my soul. O my God, do I trust in thee. Let me not be ashamed. Let not mine enemies triumph over me. Yea, let none that wait on thee be ashamed.
How you coming there,
Let them be
Junior?
ashamed which transgress without cause. Show
How
me
long
thy
before?
ways, O Lord. Teach
Son.
me thy paths. Lead me in thy
Son.
truth and teach me. For thou
You're
art
gonna be
the
seeing
God
some things that may not set too well.
do I wait
When we get home, I got enough of that peach brandy for both of us.
According to thy mercy, remember thou me for thy goodness' sake, O Lord. This'll only last a moment. Think about it like you're leaping over a wide ditch. And when you land, you be in heaven.
Junior? I'd be jumping over a big ditch. Heaven's on the other side.
Is there anything you want to say? Any last words?
Please, can we go?
Honestly, I'm glad that the family feels a sense of relief and justice for George. However, I cannot help but think and feel a sense of anger regardless of whether he was exonerated or not. Judge Mullen didn't declare George innocent of the crime, but based her decision on the lack of due process and the violation of his constitutional rights. Did George commit these heinous crimes? Maybe, maybe not. Do I believe he did? No, I don't. I could with certainty say that justice was not served and progress was not made. Malcolm X said it best.
If you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. You pull it all the way out, that's not progress. The progress is healing the wound that's a blow made. And they haven't even begun to pull a knife out, much less try and heal the wound.
What do you think about this case and similar cases where black boys and men are accused, tried, convicted, and sentenced for crimes toward whites, females in particular, and later exonerated? Think of the exonerated 5 who were coerced into confessing the crimes that they didn't commit. Emmett Till, Alexander McClay Williams, and countless others. Racism still exists, not as overtly and broad as it once was, but one life taken under the evil of racism is unacceptable. If you want to learn more about how racism and colorism divided blacks amongst themselves, check out this video here. Let me know your thoughts on what happened to George in the comments. Peace, stay blessed, and God protect.